Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and we have another community question. This comes from Alan Brooks, and he asks, what's the most obscure console you've ever played? Man, what a great question, and to help me answer this, I've reached out to a bunch of my friends, so we're gonna get answers from Lazy Game Reviews, Gemma, Tito, Kinsey, Reggie, but I'm gonna start with Kelsey because she does not hold back. Check it out.
Okay, this is my kind of question because I am a handheld person. I am a weird handheld person. I know you're probably expecting me to talk about like the Wonder Swan or something, or maybe the N-Gage or the Tapwave Zodiac, or no, those are mainstream. Okay, let's start with the Benessi Pocket Challenge. This is the V1, this is the V2. This was an educational handheld system out of Japan, and it was made by the same people who worked on the Wonder Swan out of Koto Laboratories. So you get this fun thing. This is a Wonder Swan game. This is a Benessi Pocket Challenge game. Notice that they are like basically the same. They're made by the same people, and some of the cartridges are kind of cross-compatible. At the very least, they work in like an emulator interchangeably if you just change the extension, which is very cool. All right, how about the Game King out of China? Or you know what? That's not good enough. How about the Game King 2 out of China? How about the One Station? Here's one of my favorites. This is the Aqua Plus Piece. This was a Japanese console it's kind of like a proto Playdate. So it had a huge homebrew community. Lots of people making games with the very, very simple black and white, totally like kind of primitive electronics here. Had some sort of PDA-ish features too. And yeah, huge homebrew community and a lot of like adult games on it too, which is kind of interesting. How about the GP2X or GP32, both of these out of South Korea. This was like king of emulation machines for a little while in the mid-2000s. How about the Game Master or the Cougar Boy? Everyone's heard of the Cougar Boy. It's just the Brazilian version of the Mega Duck. Come on, you guys know that. How about the Game Mate? This is a Taiwanese console that was weirdly popular in Italy, got kind of a decent share of the market over there. I'm running out of space here, I'm gonna knock stuff over. One version of the Supervision, Watara Supervision, or the other version of the Watara Supervision. This was a very, very cheap handheld. This was that went for about $50, made to compete with the Game Boy. A lot of these handhelds come out of the like 90s through early 2000s. I think just about all of them do. But this is like my exact jam, is this weird stuff. It was a super cool time in history for interesting handhelds. It's a cool thing to explore.
Okay, I have two answers, one of which is maybe sort of kind of cheating, but my most legit answer is the Amstrad GX4000, an exclusive to Europe consoleized version of the Amstrad CPC 8-bit home computer. Although I think it's based on the Plus version, but whatever, only like 15,000 of the console versions were made, and it is just incredibly obscure here in the US. I think I've only ever seen one of them in person. That was at the Long Island Retro Convention not too long ago. I was psyched to finally just get my hands on the thing, even see it at all. But yeah, actually using it, picking it up, felt like nothing. It's so cheaply made. The plastic is so thin it made it feel like it was made of I don't know, used yogurt containers or something, but I actually like how it looks with its wavy off-white spaceship aesthetic. And the controller is surprisingly okay, like a cheaper rounded NES pad. The games, well, you can be happy that it has games at all. There were maybe 30 titles released, and most of them are just basic conversions of regular old CPC games. They're fine. But yeah, for my secondary cheat answer, I gotta go with the Sega Terra Drive made in Japan through a partnership between Sega and IBM. It has a full Mega Drive / Genesis inside, so it does actually play the cartridges. You just got those that go right in there, but it's also a full DOS PC in there as well. And the two systems can actually communicate with each other to a degree. This thing has long been one of my holy grail systems. I love the Genesis. I love PCs. Having them together is just insane. The Terra Drive is easily one of my favorite obscure consoles. I'm just not sure that I'd call it a console, because it's so much more than that.
So what is the most obscure console that I personally have ever played? And it's one that never existed, but it's also one that a lot of people have already played. Now, I know that doesn't make any sense because how can people play a console that was not released? Well, let me show you what it is, and I'll explain. This is the Sega Neptune. Now, this was a concept console that Sega was going to release in between the Genesis and the Sega Saturn, and it was briefly advertised, I believe it was at like an E3, but they never released it. And essentially what this is it's a combination Sega Genesis with a built-in 32X. So whereas you needed a add-on for the Sega Genesis to play 32X games, this was kind of an all-in-one package. Now, like I said, Sega never released this, so how do I have one? Well, this is a total replica, but it is a fully functioning Sega Genesis with a 32X add-on. So this is actually created by a few different people. The shell was created by a guy named Divizix out of the UK, I believe, and the modification to the Model 2 Sega Genesis to add 32X capability was created by a guy named Longhorn Engineer, and then further refined by another modder named PCB Assembly 99. And when you put all their work together, you get basically a fully functioning Sega Neptune that was never released. So this is by far probably the most unique console that I've played, even though, like I said, it was never released, and a lot of you folks have played Genesis and 32X games. Now, I do have a couple runner-ups, and the first one being the GameCube Nano. So this is a fully functioning GameCube using Wii hardware, but that's been completely cut and trimmed to fit in this cute little GameCube form factor. And this was created by Crazy Gadget and Wesk. So they teamed up and they came up with this really, really cool mod, fully functioning GameCube. You can play all your GameCube games on this. Of course, you're not going to play GameCube discs, but yeah, very, very cool. And the other one is the Tiny Tendo, which is a fully functioning NES, but in the form factor of a Game Boy. And this was made by Red Herring 32, another very talented modder. So, and it even uses these cute little NES cartridges. So very cool mod. And yeah, those are the most unique consoles that I've personally played.
Hey everyone, Kinsey here. So what's the most obscure console I've ever played? Great question, because I think it's definitely this console that I picked up on my first trip to Japan like 5 years ago, and it was only 300 yen because it was untested, didn't come with any cables, and I took the gamble on it. And that is the Yamaha Cira. And I love this little system. It's basically like a very upgraded Sega Pico. And the Sega Pico was a educational system, like, you know, like a little kid edutainment system. And this is a huge upgrade. It has 2 MIDI ports, it has an FM sound chip, it has like support for microphones, and it can do musical composition. It has stereo sound output. Like, it's a huge upgrade on the Pico. And it's just awesome. Like, because it has the microphone output and stuff, like this game, Melodyland, it has a section where you can do karaoke to, you know, classic hits like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. What's not to love about that? But it has so many like really awesome rad games to teach kids about music, and it's just a really cool upgrade to the Sega Pico. It was launched in 1993 and thought to be dead by 1994. But I think what they did was so cool, and it has the most adorable mascot, right? And on top of all that, since it is based on the Sega Pico, it plays all the Sega Pico games, which has a great library of stuff, including several Sailor Moon titles. So that's a plus. And it has its own collection of Cira games, which is, they only have about 10, but it takes advantage of all of its really awesome upgrades from the Pico. So I think definitely the most obscure console I've ever played, and the coolest, is the Yamaha Cira.
The most obscure console I have ever played is actually a Japanese handheld. It is the Sega Mega Jet. I own one in my collection, and there were a few different kinds of models that were available in the kind of early to mid 90s on Japanese airlines. Now, these things were actually built into the armrest of the airline. You could, of course, play built-in games like Sonic the Hedgehog, and I think it was like Super Monaco GP or something like that. You could play them built in, as is. Or even better, you could take your own Sega Mega Drive cartridges and play your own software on a flight. That is was revolutionary for the early to mid 90s to be able to do that. Why they didn't do that over here, I have no idea, I have no clue. But the Sega Mega Jet did get a commercial release. Now, if you want to get one yourselves, you can utilize it by plugging it into a mains and then literally running the kind of AV cable into the back of the TV and utilizing the Sega Mega Jet like your controller whilst you play your games on the screen. This is a wonderful device, and not many people have heard of it. When I've spoke about it on my channel, people are like, I never knew this existed. And that fascinates me, the fact that there are retro games and retro game consoles out there that people have never even heard of. So I think for me, the Sega Mega Jet is definitely one you need to look out for. If you can pick one up, maybe you can import one, definitely look into that. But it's definitely worth doing a little bit more reading if you want to know more about the Sega Mega Jet. It's a great piece of hardware and I love mine.
Alright guys, so my obscure system is the Amiga CD32 system. Yes, it comes in this big box. It's pretty much almost comparison to the PS5 box. Pretty hefty packaging here. But this system is pretty obscure because it wasn't released in a lot of territories. I think if it was released in America, it would have had a longer lifespan, maybe. But unfortunately, some monies weren't paid and it stayed pretty obscure. Now, when it comes to the games for the system, they're pretty like hit and miss, I would say. You know, there's a couple good ones that stand out, but thankfully for me, because the games are kind of hard to get for the system, I actually have a flash drive on the back of the system, so that gives me access to some of the Amiga game libraries from the older systems, which is nice. Now, as far as the controller goes, it's pretty like weird, but I think it'll grow on most people who try it out, depending on what game you play. You know, some of the games have weird controls, mainly Battletoads comes to mind. But you know, one of the things I'm looking forward to with this system is that it's possible that Xenocrisis might get released on it. I feel like this is the perfect system for that game, and hopefully that happens in the near future. But anyways, the Amiga 32 CD, or CD32, excuse me, if you see it out there and it's a good price, you know, give it a whirl, try it out.
See what I mean? Some really interesting answers there, right? Now, for me, the one thing that popped into my mind was the Nintendo PlayStation prototype. So back in 2015, this revealed itself as Terry and Dan Diebold discovered what they had bought at auction. The story goes that Terry had worked at this company and had kind of blind bought this box that included this Nintendo PlayStation prototype, a CD add-on that Sony was going to make for, I believe, the Super Famicom. But the deal fell through. They made 200 of these in total, is what the rumor is. But this is the only one that has ever been found up to this point. The cool thing is that Ben Heck actually got it to work. But the amazing thing is that Terry and Dan used to go around to all of these retro gaming expos and just let people play it. They sat it on a table and anybody could walk up and play this thing. And so I believe at the time they had a cartridge of Street Fighter II Turbo in there, the Super Famicom version. And you could walk up and just grab the controller and play this a little bit. And so I along with many people, got their hands on that prototype at that time. And again, it was just such a wild thing to have such a rare piece of gaming history right there at an expo that anybody could walk up and play. It was an incredibly cool experience. And at the end here, I want to give a huge thanks to my friends who gave me their answers. They are all amazing content creators themselves. If you're not following them, please do so. They do amazing work. So thank you very much, guys. And as always, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.